pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rebecca, can you take a roll?
Director Strange is absent. Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Thomas?
Here.
Director Enderberg?
Here.
And President Bennett?
Here. Thank you. It's time for public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment? Hello.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Mike Lemke. I am president of the CCWD Building Industry Association and a local home builder in our area. The state of California mandates fire sprinklers in our new homes. Building constraints and design parameters are continuing to tighten in how we design things, build things, etc. The majority of the water supply utility districts in California have been going towards a 1-inch water supply to the home and incorporating a 1-inch meter for homes that are required to have fire sprinkler systems. The 5/8 meter that we currently have, we're still making it work, but we're having to do too many workarounds to make a fire safety system work for the home. The reference in the design industry is everywhere else you design for a 1-inch meter supply. In Calaveras County, you have a 5/8 meter. They refer to it as a garden hose size. And for a $28,000 premium, you can actually have the fire hose size that will help put out the fire in your home. It's something that we think needs to be discussed, raised a bit more, especially as we're starting to see some more new home growth activity out there. And I think it's something that we could achieve and work through in this county. So staff has positively kept their doors open for discussion, but I believe this will be a policy level item, so I wanted to give you awareness and heads up on it, and we will proceed through staff and hopefully see it appear in committee level.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that something we could add to the engineering committee?
Yeah, you bet.
We need to turn our microphones on.
Give an update on where we are with that, because you know, that could be a pretty easy solution. I don't know what the difference in the cost of a 1-inch meter is, but people are only going to use how much water they're going to use. They're not going to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much for coming and speaking, and yeah, we'll definitely put it on the agenda for engineering committee. Sir, let's make sure we have your contact information. You may have already been talking to staff, but, okay, great, okay. Yeah, that would be great, and we'll definitely follow up before we get into the engineering committee, so
No, and thank you for bringing it to our attention, and yeah, you're doing the right thing with proceeding through staff at the staff level. You probably might even get it figured out there before the policy even gets to us.
Thank you, Mike, and we'll keep you informed about the agenda and the date for the engineering committee meeting if you'd like to come and explain more about it. Okay, thank you.
In the engineering committee is made up of these two gentlemen, Director Davidson and Director Thomas. Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, item number 3 is a consent agenda. Following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. 3A, approval of minutes for the board meeting of April 25th. Review Board of Directors monthly staff sheets for April 2018, and approve to ratify claim summary 554 in the amount of $2,047,941.17.
Move for acceptance.
I would like to pull item 3C, please.
Which one?
3C. 3C will be,
Move for acceptance of 3A and 3B.
Second?
okay, we got a motion and a second for 3A and 3B. Rebecca, can you take roll?
Director Strange?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, 3C, go ahead, Russ.
Okay. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Morning? Well, it's morning. It's morning somewhere. I was trying to look here at my comments. This, of course, is, I don't know, $450,000 higher than we're used to seeing, so on a monthly dispersal. And I just want to clarify my understanding of a couple of things here. When we have, typically when we have a capital expenditure, it's notated with an A, or no, pardon me, with a capital outlay of an F. And there's a $180,000 vacuum truck here.
That's the same thing I had asked him.
Okay, all right, am I right about that?
Yes, you are, Director Thomas.
Okay, all right.
Would you like some information on that?
Of course I would, yeah.
That was actually approved in the budget, 17-18 budget, but for $158,000. When working with utilities staff, they got that quote early 2017. Since then, some of the prices have gone up. They added some equipment, and they also switched chassis from, I believe, a Kenworth to a Peterbilt, which ended up costing more money, but it was a better package for what they want and longevity. So that's why it was an additional cost associated with that. However, what utilities did is they offset that cost and greater cost there by reducing expenditures elsewhere within capital outlay budget.
Okay, with the Peterbilt, they get the belt buckles and it always costs more.
And the big red emblem, yes.
Do you want those? Is that why you're?
That's where I'm going. And the other thing that kind of piqued my interest here is the membrane cartridges on this Kubota, from the Kubota Corporation. I know that we discussed this at length before about needing to replace some things. I thought that had already been purchased. Is this a second set?
And that is on page,
Page 5 of 9.
This is the same one that you had seen before, that we had the special meeting
Right.
because that was, yeah, the need to make the
Yes.
replacement.
I just wanted
This is just the actual payment of that.
right, and there was some consulting costs along with that, but that is the bulk of the purchase for those membranes.
Okay, and then the final thing on the 7 of 9, you have a property purchase of $44,000 in copper facility. That's for parcel that we bought, and we're going to put some facilities there. But shouldn't that be under a capital account too? Capital
That will
expenditure?
actually be, at some point, will be marked as an asset.
Okay,
It's not a capital outlay. So the auditors will come back and mark that as an asset, so it'll be added into our land and property.
okay. But it just
I'll
sort of...
take a look at that because it could possibly be listed under some of our R&R programs, because that was related, I believe, to the lift station improvements. So I will double check on that to see if it's an R&R versus
Okay.
capital, yes.
Well, the only reason I'm asking this is that somebody without knowledge of what we're doing here might look at that and say, aha, that's an expenditure, and what's that all about? So
Right.
anyway, I'm satisfied with the explanations. Thank you very much. and
Certainly.
I'm prepared.
Yeah, could we go back to that 180? I know we have one vacuum truck that we're still paying for, is that?
Actually, we just made our last payment.
Oh,
For the
okay.
VACON. This is a smaller version. VACON trucks run about 450,000.
Right, right.
And we're going to be looking at getting another one as a replacement, because the one that we have, an older one, is falling apart. Plus, when they travel up and down the hill, they get a lot of mileage and wear and tear. And when you're looking at the needs, especially when we're looking at areas in Copperopolis and up the hill, you need to be able to have these VACONs there for sewer spills. What they're looking for is a smaller pumper truck, in which this is, to be able to do a lot of the day-to-day stuff, pumping sewage out and doing those type of things. That's a lot less expensive option for that. But you're right, we did pay off the the VACON truck. I signed that just yesterday.
How did it feel?
Oh, it felt really good.
Okay.
One additional comment on the way that the use and wear and tear on those trucks is, I observed that when they were in use, the engine was running at a very, very high RPM just to activate the equipment. So that although you're not accumulating any miles on the odometer, the engine's running at a fairly high RPM, which would contribute to a premature wear on the engine, far beyond what you'd expect for the mileage on the vehicle.
Exactly, and those have proved invaluable when we're looking at brakes. It used to be you brought in the backhoe, you dug, you hand dug when you got closer to the pipes. Those things are also used to suck out dirt and small rocks and everything to get down to the brakes, so it makes things a lot quicker, faster, and much more responsive. So they're multi-purpose units.
I watched the crew do a leak repair on Copper Cove Drive early last year, and it was really quite amazing how that piece of equipment helped them do that repair. They would have been there hours and hours longer without it. So. Anyway, unless there are other questions, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Any further questions on this item, 3C?
Okay, I move that we approve 3C.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please take roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we were trying to set a record here, thanks to Director Thomas. That may not be possible now. Item 4 is a new business. We got nothing there. Old business, item 5A, update on actions of the East Side Groundwater Sustainability Agency and JPA. Peter Martin, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. President, board members. I'll make this really brief today, just to I don't have a presentation or anything. So on last Wednesday, there was a kickoff of the Project Advisory Committee, which is made up of actually staff members for the most part, and I am on that committee, and that will be guiding a lot of the more technical details for the effort on the groundwater sustainability plan, and then those items will then go to the full JPA board in the future. So it's sort of just a new group that's been formed, and that will be kind of active for the next couple of years while that plan is being put together. And then secondarily, the Calaveras County Memorandum of Understanding, the amended Memorandum of Understanding, which you had before you quite some time ago, has been finalized. So Calaveras County is now a member of the Eastside Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And I actually went through the kind of formal process of updating the website that's required for the SGMA, and that was done today. So that's been finalized, and they're a full-fledged member of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency as well. So.
Well, excuse me, will they be contributing some money towards that?
Yeah, so I actually, the timing is interesting because I got a call from their staff over there, and they had actually set aside money for this fiscal year. However, the way that things worked out, there won't be any billing until the next fiscal year. So I had a discussion with staff over at Calaveras County that we will be getting an invoice from the JPA, and they're then re-invoicing the county for a portion of that as well. So.
Just curious, Peter, how many members of the new group that was formed, how many members in that group? How big is that committee?
So this will be made up of the 4 agencies: the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, the Eastside Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which we are a member of, will be made up of Calaveras County Water District, and then Stanislaus County and Rock Creek Water District over in Stanislaus County. And then the larger Joint Powers Authority currently has a membership of 17 of those individual GSAs. And at the moment, I believe that Lathrop is looking for a modification, so it could go down to 16 in a matter of part-time as well.
With the new advisory group that
Oh.
you're a part of, how many people?
So, yes, I'm sorry. So, yeah, one member from each groundwater sustainability agency in that group. So again, the 16 or 17 members, much like the makeup of the Joint Powers Authority. However, there were a lot of concerns about Brown Act violations, so they asked that members that serve on the Joint Powers Authority Board do not sit on the Project Advisory Committee if possible, so.
It wasn't that there was a prohibition, it's just that they were fearful of the numbers making a quorum, so.
Right. And it becomes challenging for some small water districts, like Northern San Joaquin, for instance. I think they have like one employee that's part-time, and, you know, the board members kind of run that. So they recognize that it may not be possible for everybody. But as far as I know, they have no issue right now as far as, you know, getting a quorum in that group and then of the Joint Powers Authority Board, so.
Okay. Anything further?
Unless Russ has anything to add.
I don't have anything to add other than I would have been there if I hadn't been at the Aqua meeting, so couldn't be at two places at once.
No, that's pretty hard to do.
But we had, our designated alternate is Walter Ward from Stanislaus County, so he sat in on the JPA meeting, and Peter was there for the advisory committee. And we all talk amongst ourselves there.
Yep.
So I'm glad we're involved.
All right, great, thank you. Moving on, items 6 on our agenda is General Manager's Report. Mr. Egerton.
All right, we are setting a record here. We're going right this, but we do have quite a few closed session items. Thank you. I just want to mention a couple of things that learned and experienced at the Aqua Conference this past week. Of course, we had the Northern California Conference in Sacramento, and as part of that, we had our committee meetings on Tuesday, and so I was in several committees. I'm on, of course, chair of the Federal Affairs Committee, and then I'm on the Water Management Committee, and then I've recently also joined the Agricultural Committee. It's a new committee that was just started, one of the new standing committees of Aqua, and it was done after a long process to determine how the organization could better serve the interest of agriculture. And I decided to do it, one, because I think ag is important in our county already, but it's going to be even more important, particularly our role in being able to provide water supplies to ag for the future of our county. And also, I really wanted to make sure that through the Federal Affairs Committee that I was really being responsive to the needs of ag, because a lot of the issues are federal, as we know, through U.S. Bureau of Reclamation in particular. So we had those meetings, and one of the things I learned through the briefings on the federal affairs, there's an initiative underway, at least the EPA has taken comments on an issue that I had some awareness of, but I didn't, not to the fullest extent that I got in the briefing, and it was pretty concerning, because the issue that they're looking at is whether on a waste discharge permit with wastewater systems to take a look at the groundwater connection between the discharge and a wastewater plant. For example, if you have a land application discharge like we do at almost all of our systems, to look at the groundwater in conjunction with that to determine whether any of the effluent is entering the groundwater and then being transported to a jurisdictional water of the U.S. So it could enter the groundwater and then percolate into, say, into a wetland or a stream or something adjacent. And what they're considering is whether that would necessitate the having a higher level of treatment and a higher level of permit, an NPDES permit, for that wastewater system. And so we were talking about it, and Aqua has submitted comments on it. It's one of the things we're going to continue to work on. I mean, you can imagine if we had to, if that were, there were found to be some connection that were required us to do a higher level of treatment and on our systems under NPDES permits, how incredibly difficult that could be for an agency like us financially to do that in a regulated environment, how much more complicated and expensive that would be. So That was a very important issue that we're going to continue to monitor closely. And again, it's one of those reasons why we need to be a part of a large coalition like Aqua to make sure that we really have a powerful voice in that. Next, I just want to note we did have some meetings with Reclamation. We met with U.S. Bureau of Reclamation at the conference, and Director Rademan, appreciate you being there for that as well. We met with the Regional Director, David Murillo, and the Folsom area staff who we're working on right now, working with, I should say on, maybe it was a Freudian slip. We're working with right now as they complete the WIN-ACT report that we care so much about, on the ability to utilize storage at New Melones in partnership with local agencies under their water rights to achieve other benefits like groundwater banking. And so that was it was a good opportunity to check in. The report is going to be done this summer, and then we believe that there will be next steps beyond this, and we're going to continue to work towards ultimately gaining access to storage or conveyance at the reservoir in some manner that does works within the complexities of all of the other water users on the system and all the other environmental demands. Just to note, David Murillo is retiring in November. Really sorry to see that. He's really a man that is of integrity that I really appreciated his candor in our meetings. I mean, it's a very difficult position they're in with many competing demands, but he's always been very upfront with us and incredibly professional. So. Also, just to note, some of the people that we met back in D.C., Austin Ewell was at the conference. He was at the Federal Affairs Conference speaking, and really good update on what's happening in Interior right now. Also, we had the Deputy Secretary of Interior was there as well. He came up and spoke and talked about the regulatory reform issues and some of the things they're looking to do with ESA reform, which was really interesting. Let's see, lastly, I just wanted to mention that this is something that we have a legislative legal affairs committee meeting coming up soon, and that's something we need to talk with the afterwards members of the committee to schedule that. But the conservation legislation that you've been briefed on before, Joel's given you lengthy briefings on that, is moving towards being signed into law. It's moving through the legislature to the governor's desk. Joel, if there's anything you want to add to what I'm about to say, but I just wanted to note, our primary issue of concern was how do they utilize aerial imagery to calculate a land-based outdoor irrigation budget for agencies like us across the state. That was the idea that, and there are agencies in more coastal, more urban areas where they utilize this photography to calculate the irrigated area of each customer's property, and then they can calculate how much water should be applied, and that becomes the budget and the defined measure of what your conservation or water use efficiency standard should be. Our real challenge, our real concern about that was that would be incredibly difficult to do in the kind of terrain that we have with forested conditions with a lot of changes in elevation. And so what I'm getting to is I'm pleased to see that what's in form right now in the legislation, the two bills that are moving forward, would actually take a little longer approach towards resolving that issue about the outdoor irrigation requirements, and won't immediately impose those requirements upon us, but will instead continue the analysis through DWR with a report back to the legislature, I think in 2021, about that, with action to be taken at that time. So that can give us the opportunity to work through some of those technical challenges that we are concerned about, because again, we're concerned about the reliability of the information that would be gained. And then if we felt that it wasn't accurate, then we would be put in the position again of us as a small district trying to go out and ground truth that kind of information, which would be very difficult. So really appreciate all the hard work of Joel and the coalition through Aqua. Again, has been is the reason why this outcome is here, because there was an all-out push to move this legislation through with those requirements in place, and we were able to push back on that, and I'm very, very pleased to see that. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Board member reports, information, future agenda items. Terry, we'll start with you.
I'm missing a T-stand meeting today because of the change of this meeting. We are in a process of trying to do a number of things in the T-stand, but I think that, upcoming budget's an issue, and they're looking at ways to make it fair with the other individual groups that are part of the JPA. Dave and I talked a little bit last evening about it, and no action by the board yet over there in relationship to coming up with, the buy-in fee, so to speak, to meet the total budgetary requirements of that IRWM. But hopefully in the future we can avoid these conflicts with either the T-stand or with the MOC or whatever. And I guess partly some of that was my responsibility or fault for not bringing that to the attention of this group when we decided to change our meeting because of the Aqua conflict. So anyway, other than that, nothing to report.
Thanks. Jeff? Russ?
How much time do I have?
You've already blown the budget on time earlier in the meeting, so now you have as much time as you need.
Okay. First of all, I want to apologize for missing our last meeting. I was a long ways away. Terry talked about his trip to Korea, but I want to talk a little bit about a 147,000 square foot house in North Carolina that I visited with 60 bathrooms. Robbie, what would be the meter size you would need for 60 bathrooms? Okay. Anyway, this was a house that was opened up in 1895, interestingly, by George Vanderbilt. Quite a remarkable structure, the Biltmore House. On the Aqua Conference, boy, oh boy, every time I go to one of those conferences, I go away shaking my head about how little I knew before I got there, and I'm not sure that I understood what I learned while I was there. Some of the interesting topics that I heard people present on was the concept of water transfers that are likely to happen with the implementation of Sigma. I think that I can sense that Calaveras County Water District will be able to take advantage of those water transfers. At least I'm hoping that we can. There was in another session there was significant discussion about the water board's implementation or the edict that they have about 30% to 50% of unimpaired flows for the salmon recovery, and how science really doesn't justify that, and there's substantial momentum, I think, accumulating for the idea of scientifically managed flows that would, it's been demonstrated on a Butte Creek up in Northern California that they changed the methodology, changed the approach, and started managing the flows and putting the flows instead of the little fingerlings into the river where they were going to be fighting it out with other predators and things, that they put them into the what's the name of that the causeway, the Sacramento Causeway. They put them in there, and they've had like 30,000 fish that have returned to that particular small stream. It's really quite remarkable. I hope that the Water Board is listening. And then Jerry Brown made a surprise appearance, and I'm not particularly on the same page with Jerry on a lot of things. Probably the worst thing is the high-speed rail, but for an 80-year-old guy, he has a lot of energy, and his delivery was really quite remarkably good. He talked about the water fix from a standpoint that I hadn't really thought of before. It's a huge amount of money. Maybe the science is questionable, but the undeniable fact is that if there was a catastrophic event in the Delta, the whole state would be in a world of hurt if we didn't have continuation of water delivery to all of our friends and neighbors down in Southern California. The idea of the economic vitality of the state being thrown into catastrophe without a reliable source of water is really very much I think, a valid argument for continuing with that project. I haven't seen anybody throw anything my way, so maybe Jerry is right about that. So that's about all I have to say about my report, other than I'm glad to read that the rate hearings and the town hall meetings have been going reasonably well. I guess we'll know better when the room fills up next meeting, but anyway, I'm glad to be back, and thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Bertha?
Okay, I took a little aside at the Aqua Conference. I think it was Mr. Jeff Davidson has just made this great big impact on my thinking as far as fire is concerned.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
As far as who? You gotta be careful with him.
Not if, when. And and I keep saying this all the time. We have, in Ebbets Pass, have bit the bullet 3 times already. Okay, one of the things that's happening, and I think I might have mentioned this the last time, is they've now cut a fire break all the way around Arnold, which I think is just marvelous. But, so I went to a couple of fire meetings, and one was getting ready for a fire. And I'm sure Joel and Dave and everybody, you know, you all knew what happened in the Butte and everything, but there was just some different issues that came up. And then another session was the fire in Santa Rosa, actually what happened in real detail. And I was telling Dave what I'd like to do is get my notes together and maybe, you know, write them all up and make some kind of a presentation, so we might be more knowledgeable, or we might be made more aware of different issues that came up.
Director Under, I would, you know, we've been planning for some time to have the Cal-Am group, Pat McGreevy and the other volunteers who are working on this issue, who are doing the wildfire protection planning and also going after the grants. We're going to have them on the agenda for one of our meetings. Maybe that would be a good opportunity in the next few months. If you want to bring that information forward with that meeting, we can do that.
Okay, that would be fine. That would be real opportune, yeah. So the Aqua Conference, I really enjoy getting out and meeting other people from the other agencies, and you get to recognize a lot of the people who have been reelected up and down the state. But there's one of the sessions that we had on Wednesday night, put on by Kathy Teagues, the ex-chair of Aqua, was entitled Women in Water. And you fellas would not believe the impact of women in water. I don't know if any of you have been up to the 15th floor, the one in the Sheraton or the Hyatt that overlooks the Capitol. That entire room was full of women, and they are in every capacity imaginable. I was just really, it's a real eye-opener, and I'm just so happy to see them. And I think that we should nurture women in our organization.
You do?
More. Oh, yeah. So anyway, I really enjoyed the Aqua Conference, and I look forward to the one in Monterey next year.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, I'm going to try and be brief here. I got a Mountain County's board meeting this coming Wednesday. It's going to be at the Placer County Water Agency. They are also planning, the Mountain Counties is planning a symposium at the Ridge in Auburn on May 30th. I encourage as many of you to go
Headwaters, right.
as possible. Both Congressman McClintock and LaMalfa will be there again. This is the second straight time they've had a symposium and have been able to attract both of them while they're back home from Washington, D.C. They also have a great program designed on Headwaters management, forestry management. It's going to be, I think, an eye-opener. Also, I had a lot of good classes and programs that I went to at the Aqua Conference. It was, the other keynote speaker besides Governor Brown was who was Deputy Secretary of the Interior Burkhart, which was the gentleman we met with in Washington, D.C. with the Department of Interior, Austin Ewell. It was actually his boss that spoke at the as a keynote speaker the day before Governor Brown got there, and that was another very good program. On Monday, we're meeting with the Board of Supervisors, Chair and Vice Chair here, and then on Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County have on their agenda Wild and Scenic for possible support. And we're going to have a contingency at that meeting as well to help direct them and hopefully get their support behind the 142 program. That's all I have right now. Our next board meetings are Wednesday, May 23rd. It's going to be our regular board meeting, public hearing on proposed rates here in this room at 1 o'clock. Following that, Wednesday, June 13th, our regular board meeting. And then our second meeting in June is going to be on the 27th, 1 o'clock here. We're going to go into closed session here in a couple minutes. We've got several items to discuss, as well as one that's been just added, which we're going to take under a special meeting. The regular meeting is 9A, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Lock Contenders Investors Ltd. versus CCWD, and then conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, conference with real property negotiators on a Copper Cove project or possible project, conference with real property negotiators on a West Point property. The closed session under the special board meeting, which could start anytime after 1:30, and it's after 1:30 right now. So that's going to be 4A, conference legal counsel on potential litigation, a separate case. Anyway, with that, we're going to go into closed session, and we'll be back to report any business or any decisions from that afterwards. Thank you.
And any public comment on the closed session?
Oh, any public comment on closed session items before we leave the room? Okay, see you none. Thank you very much.